Hey folks, Rob Wolf here, Greg Everett, and we really are in the house today. Episode 165 of the Paleo Solution Podcast. I am at Catalyst Athletics. It's clearly the end of the world, dude. What's going on?
Not much. Psyched that we don't have to deal with Skype today.
Seriously?
For once. That's
Damn
usually
Skype.
the hardest part. Well, we won't pick on Skype in particular. I don't want to beat up on those guys, but the internet in general.
True.
It's unreliable and non-trustworthy. It's kind of like a stripper, but more useful.
I don't pay anything for Skype, so yeah.
Yeah, it's the best kind.
The analogy's falling down here.
Oh boy, I didn't think that one through. It's okay.
So what's going on, man?
I've been working all week on 2 of my 3 current top secret projects.
Nice. I
And
like
I'm
top
psyched.
secret projects.
We got
Although
some-
Greg shared them with me, and I'm excited.
We got some good momentum going on that, and I'm looking forward. 2 of them will be rolling out kind of early to midway through the year. The last one's going to be towards the end of the year, but it's going to be good stuff.
Sweet.
Definitely a number of things that people have been begging us to do for a long time. So
Cool.
I'm excited.
Dude, begging and secret projects. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
What's happening over in Reno?
Snow, cold, but no taxes and easy access to brothels. So
What's there to complain about?
exactly. I gotta
You
say,
can always put on a sweatshirt.
my buddy Kirk Parsley, which we will meet him here pretty soon at some point on the podcast at least. He started listening to all the podcasts, and when he got to, I think it was like the first one that we did when we were in Rito.
Yeah.
And you were like, so what's going on? I'm like, oh, the place is on fire, and you were like, how does gravel burn? and he manages to fit how does gravel burn into general conversation about 6 times whenever I hang out with him. So
It's an important question. Those are the kind of things that keep the world spinning.
truly.
All right.
So we've got sponsors. We're videotaping this thing too. So Greg may actually put this thing on the internet. We'll see how fat we look, and then we'll decide from there. But there may be video accompanying this, which is kind of cool. Evolve Foods. I've got a handful of jerky here. You want a piece?
I'm good for now.
Good for now. Okay. Go to Evolve Foods. Buy some chow. The affiliate software is still broken, so I'm still not making any money off of that. But then we have frontdeskhq.com, which is a small service-based business is who they're trying to service there. If you've got a CrossFit gym, any type of a service-based entity, it's for you. You can schedule appointments, take payments, do payroll. It's super snazzy. Frontdeskhq.com. Yes.
Awesome. And I just put a note in there for myself to make sure we put a link in there. I'm sure there's a banner on there, but
Yeah, we need to start
people
doing
don't
that.
like searching around for these
true.
sorts of things. When they hear them, they want to click on them instantly.
True.
All right, you ready?
Yeah, Squatchy picked a really eclectic bunch today.
This is a really odd. This is like the. It's like a flea market collection of questions right here. You're just not really
steam
sure
rooms
why they're there,
to softcore porn.
how they got there, but it's pretty incredible. And I had to pass on the jerky because my jaw's gonna get tired just from reading some of these fancy words here.
I'm sure I'll be spitting jerky on my laptop here soon. So
Should be fine. All right. Steam rooms. Troy says, "Hey Rob and Greg, I love the podcast. It has changed my health in a lot of ways. My question is, do you see any risks to 14+ minute wet steam room sessions after a workout? The sauna at my gym gets really hot, and there are usually a handful of people that cycle in and out in the time that I am in. I use this time to work on my breathing and always assume staying in that long flushed out extra toxins. After, I always lick some pink crystal salt, take magnesium, and drink extra water, along with my other post-workout eating routine. Any thoughts on saunas?"
I'm just curious, what's the pink crystal salt? Is that what is
I
causing
assume
people
he's-
to eat other faces or something? or?
He sounds like he's replenishing his spent electrolytes.
This is like
It just seems like a really creepy way to do it.
it's like the pink Himalayan sea salt.
There you go.
Which I have a theory on that. They find Himalayan like Buddhist monks who have some sort of urinary tract infection.
Have him piss in the snow.
They piss in the snow. They concentrate it, and they let the water evaporate out, and what you're left with is the residue, which is going to be sodium-containing products and whatever kind of pink gelatinous stuff gets in your hoo-ha from urinary tract infection.
It makes perfect sense. It's a really good low cost of goods sort of product.
Totally. So
And it's very local and sustainable.
exactly. Totally. Unless we run out of monks with urinary tract infections. So that doesn't really answer the question about the steam room. So I
Not
guess,
at all.
I think you can overdo a steam room or a jacuzzi. So 14 minutes is probably okay, but if it's like 108 degrees or something, it could be a little much. I know that I can get kind of knackered after being in a hot tub sauna kind of gig for too long. I think doing some contrast hydrotherapy isn't bad, but I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I can't stand to be in a sauna or steam room for 14 plus minutes. I can stand a couple minutes and then I've got to get out. Like you said, the contrast is awesome. Being able to get out of that and go into a cold pool. I've mentioned it before on here. There's a place locally called Watercourse Way, which you can rent rooms. Most of them have a cold plunge, a hot tub, and then either a dry sauna or a steam room, which is awesome because it's like $20 for an hour. You can go in there and do the cycle.
Is this anywhere near the red light district or?
It's not, but funny you say that because each room also has a small bed.
Perfect.
Although it looks
Just in case
looks
you need a
uncomfortable and not good for sleeping. So I'm always careful when touching that part of the room. But point being, I don't know that the benefits you're going to get from a steam room or a sauna are going to increase beyond that kind of time threshold.
Right.
In other words, doing a couple cycles of 3 to 5 minutes, are you going to get something more out of it going 14 plus minutes, or
Right.
are you just going to feel like shit and be really dehydrated?
I would probably
don't
go with
know.
that one.
And feel compelled to lick pink
Pink
salt.
salt and go eat
Yeah.
bums' faces. Yeah.
I mean, definitely, unless you're cutting weight, obviously, it's probably a great idea to drink some water
Right.
afterwards. Make sure it actually has electrolytes in there. And otherwise, I mean, I guess I would say that if it makes you feel good and you enjoy it, then I don't really see I don't think your brain's going to melt. As long as you're rehydrating, I don't see a problem.
Yeah, I don't know what to add other than I guess the poison's in the dose, so you can definitely overdo it.
Actually, you know what? One point I would make is that this is a point that Bob Takano actually wrote about in the restoration section of his new book. And he goes into a lot of detail about restoration methods, and one of the things he mentioned that I had never really thought about that clearly was that you adapt to restorative methods in the same or a similar way that you adapt to training methods. So he basically is saying the effectiveness of a certain modality is reduced over time with really consistent exposure,
Gotcha.
frequent exposure. So, Troy, you may find that you do well doing saunas a couple days, and then maybe trying hot tub, maybe trying cold plunge or contrast, and trying to mix it up a little bit.
That makes sense.
And if you give that a try, let us know how it feels.
And if you bring chicks, definitely let us know.
If you bring the pink salt, make sure you let us know which side you licked so we can avoid it. All right. Silver Gone Bad. Sam says, "Hey, Robb and Greg. Thanks for taking the time to read my question, although I hope that it's just a quick one. Not that I don't enjoy Robb's whirl-winded answers." I'm not sure. I'm not sure how to interpret that. You'll all see how it's spelled here in a minute. I've been flirting with the paleo diet for a few months with full fat milk during training and the occasional blowout from the milk as the only diversions in my otherwise paleo paved road. And my girlfriend is the same, other than an increased carb intake in the evening after exercise. She performs mostly cardio and is tinkering with resistance training, with me being the reverse, although tinkering with cardio would be an overstatement. I lift heavy things as much as possible. Anyway, to the question. Just as a side note, when you say that you hope it's a quick question, if you ever have to write anyway to the question, that's a pretty good indicator that it's not a quick question. My girlfriend's silver ring has turned black within about a week of being almost paleo, whereas mine hasn't changed at all. Is this a good sign? Because I have read that it could be a sign of increased fat oxidation. However, I've also heard that it can mean the sweat is turning more acidic. Does this mean the body is turning more alkaline as a result of sweating excess toxins? Wow, another toxin question.
Yeah, what's up with the toxin deal?
Could this simply be due to the increased need for carbs with her training? By answering this question, you could potentially negate the need for me to begin cardio while seeing if my silver ring does in fact turn black. Please help. Any answers you can give would be much appreciated. Oh, and please shout out the Isle of Man if you can. I know at least one of your 6 listeners come from here. Keep up the good work.
Where's the Isle of Man? It's like British Isles?
It's probably next to Isle of Lady, I guess.
That's true. That would be convenient.
I have no idea.
Oh man! So
I think maybe the problem is that it's not real silver.
yeah, that could be one of them's legit. One of them's
She's
not.
lying.
So silver definitely oxidizes pretty easily. It's I guess you would almost say semi-precious compared to like gold or something like that. Gold is a bugger to oxidize. You need to expose it to some pretty gnarly acidic environments to really get it to dissociate, and it's hard to do amalgams or what's the multiple metals together? Alloys. Hard to do in alloys. So it tends not to rust or patina, whereas silver does. And so when you think about all the other factors like washing your hands, like there are so many other factors besides diet that could dramatically influence like the oxidative stress that the silver could be exposed to. I would be really, really suspect that it's dietary features that are the cause here. Like if she just, a different type of soap that she's using or something like that could be everything that's causing the problem.
Interesting. Maybe cleaning the house with Clorox wipes.
That could be
super oxidizer. Okay. Well, good luck to you in the Isle of Man.
Yeah, seriously, and hopefully your rings don't completely dissolve.
It sounds sort of like the name of a slightly dodgy gentleman's club.
It's true. It actually wouldn't be a bad name.
Although that could be open to misinterpretation.
That's true. Kind of like the Silver Fox down in Long Beach, or so. I'm
not familiar with that one. What was it in Police Academy? The Blue Oyster?
Yeah.
Okay. Boosting testosterone, and this gal or guy gave me a test with the name.
Yeah.
Donacha Ni Biolane says...
That's pretty good. I like it. I'm impressed.
And it just sounds a little bit like nachos. So,
nachos.
And bromelain. Okay. Hey guys, I started listening to the Paleo Solution a couple years ago, and I've been ramming the paleo dogma down the throats of all the non-believers since then. Only joking, thank God. But my mate Gary counts calories, and he's still fat, so I like giving him some shit. My question. You've mentioned before that looking at certain foods can lead to hormonal responses similar to those that we would expect if the food had actually been eaten. The, quote, food porn effect, if you like. My question is this. Is there a porn effect? Will looking at boobs before I work out increase my testosterone? If so, how long do I need to look at porn before I work out? Should I space it out evenly during the week? Most importantly, what sites do you recommend? Okay, the last question was a joke, but seriously, is there any merit to this idea? Cheers. P.S. Looking forward to hearing you pronounce my name. I hope you enjoyed it.
I think you did a good job on that pronunciation. There's some pretty good literature that seems to indicate that looking at good-looking chicks for dudes, if you roll that way, and if you are into dudes, if you look at good-looking guys, either way it'll raise your testosterone level. And then the flip side of this, interestingly, they started looking at females, and if they're looking at someone attractive, it raises their testosterone levels and increases dopamine levels and all that sort of stuff. As to a dose response, I don't really know on that. I would actually venture a guess that, probably a Bob Takano approach to this. You might want to be into kind of...
periodize it a bit?
Pigtails and big boobs one day, kind of some badunkadunk Brazilian type stuff another day, maybe a little something kinky on the third day, and then like the fourth day you just take off so that you don't totally downregulate that whole thing. But
that sounds like a fantastic plan. And also, I have to mention that it turns out, and I found this out through no searching on my own, it was sent to me, that our Olympic lift progression posters are in the background of a porn.
Yes.
I mean, that's the moment that I really knew I had made it as a coach. Is why I just transcended the market. And I got my fingers everywhere, so to speak.
Well, fingers at the very least, yes. Should we post a show note to that?
We might, if you guys are lucky. We
Yeah,
might post
if you
those
guys
back.
really want, then we'll ping you a link to the and it was also a porn shot in a former CrossFit gym. I think they de-affiliated, but they clearly, some of their box
Seems
jumps.
like that should earn you your affiliation
It
back.
should get it back, yeah. But you can see their logo clearly on their box jumps and stuff like that. I don't know if that was
boy.
a clandestine marketing ploy or what it was. But have you seen any jump in poster sales after this thing has made the rounds?
No, I have not, which I'm glad, because it could just be an indication of needing to replace dirty posters. Oh, my poster set is sticking together. What do I do? All right.
They are laminated though.
They
so
are.
you should get some mileage out of that.
Man. Okay. That was awkward. Let's see here. Pine pollen powder and bee pollen. Wow, that was almost an alliteration. Elliot says, Rob, I was wondering your thoughts on pine pollen powder as a supplement to both keep testosterone levels at bay. How would you want to do that? As a performance booster for an endurance athlete and for health in general. Also, if you have any thoughts on bee pollen on the same topics, I would greatly appreciate it.
So I dug and dug and dug, and there's like a 1970s PubMed reference that seems to indicate that you do actually find some testosterone and testosterone-like derivatives in pine pollen. Now, the question for me is whether or not like any of that stuff passes.
How many whole pine trees do you actually have to consume before it gets a tick?
Yeah. So, I mean, it is there, and it's interesting. I always ask the question, like, there are tons of phytoestrogens out in, the world. Like, soy has phytoestrogen, hops has phytoestrogens and all that. And I was like, where
Probably
is the
bottle we're drinking out of
phytotestosterone?
right now.
Totally. But where's the phytotestosterone? And so apparently this is where it's at. But I don't know to what degree you're going to get a benefit out of this stuff. Like, even in the soy, it tends to work more as a competitive inhibitor, and the biggest benefit that we see is actually in females who have too much estrogen or estrogen dominant. The phytoestrogens are weak estrogen binders, and so they actually block the action of estrogen. So I couldn't figure out if this thing was a direct, like, identical analog to human testosterone, and most of the time when people are administering testosterone, whether it's an oral or an injectable, it needs to be in some sort of like a salt form, ultimately. Like, so, it needs to be in some sort of a deliverable package, otherwise you're not going to absorb it. So it does seem to have some in it. Does it actually do anything? I don't know. Are you getting like a therapeutic dose? Would you be better going to Gold's Gym and finding Vinny and just getting some Dianabol or something? I don't know.
It seems to me if you could get a truly anabolic dose out of that thing,
I think the IOC would be cutting down pine forest by
Yeah. Okay.
And then bee pollen. I mean, bee pollen's been in the kind of alternative medicine scene for ages. It's got some interesting nutrient characteristics, but I would probably go more with like steak and nachos before bee pollen as my go-to, supplement. So
What about steak with a bee pollen glaze on a pine needle salad?
That could work.
Perfect.
With some porn playing in the background.
Oh boy. Whew. Okay, Trev says.
And shifting gears completely.
Well, not entirely. We're talking about pregnancy. So.
Yeah, I guess so.
All right. Trev says, hey there. I'll keep this short and to the point. My partner and I are expecting twins. And twins is capitalized, so I assume he's talking about the movie with Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Perfect.
Great movie. We're curious what your thoughts are on placenta encapsulation and the potential nutritional benefits for the mother. After backspacing out multiple attempts at comic relief, I've decided to simply leave it at that. Thanks, love the podcast. Sometimes the brevity is where the humor is.
It really is. So we just had a baby 8 months ago. My wife is
not the two of us.
No, not the two of us. No. We're any love child between Greg and I will. We'll keep that on the down low as long as we can. But
it'll be incredibly smart and skinny.
Yes, sarcopenic to beat the band for sure. So Nikki's a hippie. Greg knows she's a hippie. He remembers her from her even more hippie days than now.
She's gotten better. Listen, she turned me into a newt. Got better.
So Nikki was kind of looking around at the whole like placental encapsulation kind of gig, and You know, if you're some critter living out in the wild, roaming wilderness and nutrients are scarce, I guess I could make an argument for, you have the baby, you fry up the placenta, go to town. Oh, what they do with this stuff is they actually freeze dry it and put it in the capsules and this whole deal. But we have like Whole Foods and Trader Joe's and vitamin shops and shit like that. And I just don't know that I really see a huge need for this. There are some people that will say that the mother actually gets like some hormonal benefit out of this. Like they'll even save the capsules for like when they go through menopause and stuff like that. And it's supposed to help with that. So there may be some subtle benefit to the back end of all that stuff, but I don't see it being probably the thing that you need to do. And I'm pretty avant-garde and open-minded, but it's
fairly extreme.
It's a little wacky, and I know that it's pretty common in a lot of other cultures, but I was raised in rural Northern California, and I'm kind of a hick, and
it's a big step up from drinking your wife's breast milk, that's for sure.
Yes.
And that's already bordering on creepy.
Right. So, yeah, I don't know. The placentophagy seems a little odd. Could be fine. I don't see any real downside to it, put it that way. Like, I see no potential downside to it other than people possibly hazing the hell out of you. So,
other than you will never live it down.
Yes.
It's not something you can uneat. Let's put
Correct.
it that way.
Correct.
Have you ever experimented with placentas? A little bit in college. Okay. Only lifting options with a fractured vertebra. Oh boy.
I'll start chewing a piece of jerky because
there you go. It's gonna take a while. I'll chew on this question. One singular person says, all right, so I have isthmic spondylolisthesis. Yes, the transverse process of my L5 vertebra is just flapping away back there. One too many judo throws, my neurosurgeon suggests.
Judo throw!
I found out I had this unfortunate condition when it ended up causing the discs above and below it to degenerate and the L4, L5 disc to herniate pretty badly, leaving me with some rather rough sciatic pain and muscle problems, to put it mildly. I do, however, have this problem to thank for my stumbling onto the paleo diet, my not-so-little silver lining, and was able to drop my inflammation from what must have been sky-high, what with all those, quote, healthy omega-6 oils and whole grains I had been eating for years, to something more reasonable as I was able to go from maxed out on Percocet and Xanaflex to totally without drugs, still bedridden, in a matter of weeks, and did the endgame microdiscectomy entirely without drugs, which drove the nurses in the hospital nuts.
Dude, always take the drugs, even if you just pocket them and then send them to Greg
exactly.
and I.
You just tongue them and sell them later.
Little Percocet or whatever, yeah.
I healed quickly and continued losing fat and gaining muscle, all of which initially started while laying in bed all day. Smiley face. Fast forward to now, almost 5 months after the surgery. I've been doing pull-ups, push-ups, rows, overhead presses, sliding split squats, and just recently assisted pistols. That's a rifle. I have gotten hooked on your podcast and would love to try my hand at Olympic lifting, but I'm scared shitless of further neurological problems and, quote, inevitable disc fusion. Am I better off just sticking to bodyweight stuff, or have you guys trained people with this problem before without it causing further issues? If it is safe for me to try, do I need to modify anything? Are there things I need extra time to work up to, etc.? A little background here, 6 feet tall, started out 232, 31% body fat, now 232, 22 to 23% body fat. And he asks, are Tanita scales calibrated for seasonal affective disorder or something? Not sure.
I think standard American diet. And yeah, the Tanita scales are definitely calibrated for the fatties. Like if you're lean at all, it doesn't really tell you what's going on. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And paying attention to how I look rather than the scale because it hasn't moved in a long time, but I look better every day in the mirror. Oh, and we all know you guys know you're awesome, so I want one episode where instead of self-deprecation, you boast incessantly the entire podcast. Remember, it isn't arrogance if you really are that great. Thanks a ton. All right, well,
maybe that'll be like episode 200.
There you go. Yeah. We made it to 200, now we're going to talk shit.
So, I've done a little bit of training with somebody who had an L4, L5 disc fusion, actually 2 people that I can think of. One guy was in his 70s, and so like anything approximating an Olympic lift was just kind of like we did some ball slams, we did some med ball throws and stuff like that, but there was no reason to even go down that route. The other guy was like 35, 40, high-level skier at one time, and then tight hamstrings, tight hip flexors, ended up having L4, L5 disc problems, ended up with fusion. We did some dumbbell variants of like power cleans and maybe power snatch, but that was it. And lunging, front squats seemed easier on him than back squats, deadlifts off of blocks, and that was about it on that too. And that you know, it could have been overly conservative, but when people have kind of gone that far down the road and like they've been opened up and had their spine just like dangling in the breeze, like it sounds like what this guy is doing. Like if you're doing some air squats, some walking lunges, you know, loaded lunges, jumping up onto a box, stepping down, doing pull-ups, doing handstand push-ups, like you could be really fit and do a lot of cool shit without subjecting yourself to some potential problems. But I mean, you've got way more experience on the lifts. What are your thoughts on that?
I would agree with you. I tend to be fairly conservative with that stuff, and I would say that in his condition, I don't really see a benefit to the lifts that's going to outweigh the huge potential risks.
Right.
You know, he's never going to become a competitive weightlifter and be snatching and clean and jerking big weights no matter what, just considering this background. So that leaves you with doing kind of very light, probably modified lifts, you know, probably kind of hang power variants. And so if it's a matter of wanting to find something new to spend time on, you know, invest some time in learning this sort of skill, then I could see that. If you want to make it more of a skill-oriented thing, learn how to hang power snatch and hang power clean and power jerk an empty barbell really well. That's one thing, and maybe a tiny bit of weight, but I just don't see a good reason to push it beyond that. Like you said, I think a little bit more controlled kind of strength work and really focusing obviously on trunk stabilization and
reverse
rather
hypers
than
and all
kind
that
of
stuff,
dynamic
yeah.
trunk movement.
Right.
Is probably a pretty good idea. So I have never coached anyone in this condition, and I wouldn't.
Amy had a vertebral fracture, right?
She had a fracture, an L5, I believe, and but that's a little different. You know what I mean? That's something that you can heal up. There wasn't any real serious displacement of the spinal components, so it's not. You know, there wasn't any neurological damage. She certainly didn't have to have surgery, although, you know, depending on who you talk to, they wanted to.
Right.
But that's true for, you know, mild abrasions these days. So yeah, I think her case was quite different, and in this case, I mean, put it this way: if this guy came into my gym and said he wanted me to coach him in the Olympic lifts, I would talk him out of it.
Right.
I just don't see a purpose. I would say, you know, if you want to learn the lifts with a bar, start with a PVC pipe, get the mobility, and have fun. Like I said, kind of a skill learning sort of process, then right on. But to use it as an actual strength or power training modality, I don't see that being a great idea.
Cool.
Maybe I'm just a weak performer.
That's what I've heard. I mean, Dan John has no squat and all the rest of it, so.
All right. Oxalates and seizures. Sean says, have you heard of the role oxalates have on seizure thresholds? Someone brought it to my attention that foods high in oxalates can lower the seizure threshold, but after a little bit of digging, it looks like that's because oxalates bind to magnesium, preventing proper absorption. Since magnesium can increase the seizure threshold, I figured that this is why. Have you heard of this?
I had not really heard of this. In epilepsy forums, like there's just kind of what am I trying to say here? If you dig around on PubMed, there's not a lot. So, you know, there's not a lot of like randomized control trial stuff that you could find on this. Really, I couldn't find much of anything. But if you dig around on the epilepsy forums, it's kind of similar to like gluten-free diets, you know, being helpful for GERD or for autoimmune diseases and stuff like that. Like anecdotally, there's a lot of evidence for that stuff. Anecdotally, there seems to be a pretty consistent observation that a low oxalate diet seems to help with the whole epileptic seizure threshold. Obviously, ketogenic diets are helpful in that whole thing too. So the fact that oxalates bind to calcium and magnesium, you know, would cause some precipitation issues with that. That makes sense. Like beyond that, the only other things that I was finding was like ethylene glycol poisoning, and that causing some oxalate precipitation in the kidneys and some problems with all that jive, which is going kind of...
So don't drink the antifreeze?
Yeah, don't drink the antifreeze. I mean, it looks good, and apparently it tastes good, but I wouldn't recommend doing it. It looks like that's basically what they use in the Reanimator movie. Like it's got to be like antifreeze, yeah, the green glowing stuff. So I think, Sean, you're probably it's close to a mechanism here is what I could track down is potentially sequestering magnesium, although oxalates tend to bind up calcium more so than magnesium, so that's kind of interesting. They just have a greater affinity for calcium and magnesium, but could be. And then all of the mechanism aside, like even if we've got the mechanism wrong, just in the epilepsy scene, they definitely seem to recommend a low oxalate diet. So don't eat too much spinach in that case.
There you go. Anemic meat lover. How does that happen? Well, let's try to find out. Matt says, greeting wise ones. I kind of feel like people who write that kind of stuff don't really listen to this show.
No, or they don't get out very often.
I'm a 42-year-old male who has been fortunate to enjoy good health and fitness my whole life. I used to have more of a cardio bias, but in the past few years have shifted more to CrossFit football-style workouts with the occasional hockey game. I don't work out for long duration and not more than 4 times per week. I get good rest, 8 hours almost every night, despite being a shift worker on a full-time police tactical unit. I eat both eggs and meat, including wild game and grass-fed beef, in generous proportions. I eat a bit of yogurt and cheese and a few grains like rice and corn on occasion. I've avoided wheat, barley, and rye, except the distilled kind, I am Canadian, for several years and have seen an improvement in digestion and sense of well-being. A supplement with high-quality fish oil, 5 to 10 milliliters per day. There we go. 1,200 to 2,400 milligrams of EPA, DHA combined. And I have added vitamin D, 1,000 to 2,000 I use a few times per week when I can't get sun. A medical in April showed my hemoglobin at 130. Another follow-up a few weeks later was 127. My doctor suggested I stop donating blood, which I have done every 8 weeks for several years, and ordered a fecal occult blood test. That was neg. Fecal occult sounds like some kind of religious sect that worships poo.
It could be out there. It could be out there.
Why is your doctor ordering that? I looked back at results from 2 years ago and I was at 137. Low, but nobody mentioned it because the, quote, healthy range is 135 to 180. I followed up again in October and I'm still at 130. My doctor has offered no dietary suggestions and has referred me for a colonoscopy. As much as I am looking forward to that procedure, I'd sure like your thoughts on any other possible causes besides blood loss. If nothing else, at least I can listen to Rob laughing at his own poop jokes while I get violated by several feet of medical apparatus. Rock on and keep up the pseudoscience shenanigans. That's a good point.
If the nurse is good looking, though, I mean,
man,
I don't know.
It's uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable no matter how you cut that. So, a couple of thoughts. Like, there are some things like chocolate, coffee, green tea, a couple other things. If they're rich in phenolics, these large heterocyclic carbon structures, these things can block the absorption of iron. Different things like vitamin C can enhance the absorption of iron. So one thing that you could do if you really do want to pull your iron up a little bit is just supplement with some vitamin C. Take like an emergency with an iron-containing meal like steak or something like that. That said, it's interesting, like most people, because we're not parasitically infected and getting wounds and stuff like that, particularly men, tend to have too much iron. Greg wrote a piece on this for the performance menu, a better way to bleed or something like that.
Long time ago.
It was maybe like the 3rd or 4th.
Yeah, it was years ago.
Yeah, it was
definitely.
Years ago. So Dr. Reeds in Protein Power Life Plan talked about the need to mitigate iron overload. It's really important for oxidative stress, really, really important for insulin sensitivity. Anthony Colpo talks about the donating blood and reducing iron levels and that improving his insulin sensitivity a whole bunch. So the fact that you're just kind of on the low end, I don't know that I would really, I guess definitely look into why it's not different if you want to, but I don't know that I would do a whole lot trying to fix that. Like if it limits your ability to donate blood, that maybe kind of sucks a little bit. So if you do want to increase iron absorption, again, take some vitamin C. I think there's just a really broad spectrum of what is normal for one person to another, as far as what iron status will make you run well. And then also there's going to be a spectrum on like the whole uptake mechanisms to pull nutrients into the body. And you may just be on the kind of low end of that spectrum. Familial hemochromatosis, people tend to store iron in the tissues, and this is thought to be kind of a evolutionary selective kind of process trying to sequester iron out of the system to prevent it being accessible for bacteria. So when people get sick, their iron levels will drop, different B vitamin levels will drop, and this is trying to limit a substrate from the bacteria or the parasite or whatever from being available and being able to propagate. There was some work by like UNICEF or something like that in like Africa, and they would go around and check people's like iron status, and people would show low, and then they would dose them with iron, and the people would die. And it was because they actually they had like parasites and stuff like that. And so you could be on the lower end of the iron scale, just as kind of a genetic distribution of somebody who is probably less likely to have some sort of an infectious state get worse. So I'm guessing completely on that, but just within the normal genetic pool, you could expect stuff like that.
So, in other words, don't freak out too much about it.
Yeah,
unless you really want to donate blood every 8 weeks.
Yeah, because I mean, he's just right on the edge of the low, and the fact that he is donating blood consistently, and then when he stopped donating blood, it started creeping back up. That seems pretty reasonable.
Cool. All right. Well, let's wrap it up talking about vitamin D.
Sweet.
Jeremy says, lots of talk on vitamin D lately. Even in previous podcasts, people mentioning their supplementation of D, however, their levels remain low. I recently read this in one of Charles Poliquin blog topics, and the following is a quote. For some physiological reason yet to be fully explained by science, a large bolus dose twice a week seems to work better than the same dose divided over 7 days. A bolus dose is one that is prescribed to raise a blood compound such as vitamin D to an effective therapeutic level. In other words, 35,000 IUs twice a week works better than 5,000 IUs every day for 7 days. And we have a link there. What are your thoughts on a bolus dose and why that might be more replenishing than the alternative?
I know I've bumped into other practitioners like this guy, Dr. Kirk Parsley. They have noticed that the bolus dose seems to work better. I don't have a clue why. Vitamin D in like a fat soluble drop form should theoretically be pretty easily absorbed, but we do seem to see better changes in tissue or like a serum concentration of vitamin D. I wouldn't even know where to speculate what the mechanism is there, because there's not really a transport molecule involved with the absorption. So I don't know.
Well,
but all that stuff said, I'm working on probably a multi-part blog piece talking about depending on your heritage, like Northern Europeans probably need lower vitamin D levels to be healthy and to show no pathology and not have any potential downside from high vitamin D relative to somebody who's like Mediterranean, relative to somebody who's African. And so there's some pretty good data coming out that, like I've generally recommended reasonably high level of vitamin D, and that may not be appropriate for everybody. Like if you're Northern European, you may need a little less. If you're African, you may need a little more. And I still think getting it from the sun is easily the best way to go.
Well, of course. All right. That's it. Anything else we need to mention? That was super fast.
What, so you've got some secret projects. We can't talk about those yet. We're going to have Eva T on the show at some point. We're probably going to have
the Polish quotient.
Of the Polish quotient. Yep. Probably going to have Mark Sisson on soon. I think that's about it.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, let's see here. We got Bob Takano's book out, which is available print, Kindle, and PDF. We're so thoughtful.
Sweet.
My Olympic Weightlifting for Sports book is available on PDF and Kindle now. My weightlifting DVD is now available as a download.
That's right.
For all those non-US folks who don't want to pay a exorbitant shipping and customs costs.
Cool.
They can enjoy it too. And we got frontdeskhq.com. Go check it out. Go buy some jerky.
Seriously.
We have all foods, but you got to pay full price right now.
Right now you do. There's no breaks because you fill it.
But it's worth every penny.
Exactly.
All right, that's it.
Sweet.
Done. See you guys.